Greetings, Craventail. You find yourself deep in the territory of elf things, and not the ones that prance about in white robes, but their more deviant kin. So best beware, for you are surrounded and, if caught, these elf things adore torture just as much as your brothers in Clan Rictus. To the west are harsh mountains. Although their insides are ripe for burrowing, there are beast men that claim this territory too. Marauders of chaos also roam these lands, often hidden in the fierce ice-shard storms. It is a hostile place, Tretch. Grow Clan Rictus. Spread and harvest warpstone before the enemy know you are here.
Now, we've seen this many times before, right? Standard explanation on how to play Skaven. Now, what I want to touch on here is the Mortal Empires, specifically the short campaign victory for what I've seen in Skaven, in terms of victory conditions. We got our standard setup. Clan Rictus is one of the harder Skaven setups, as he's very much a vanilla faction in terms of what he gets for bonuses. This actually hurts him more than helps him because it means he can't take Lobbin. But his traits like being able to Vanguard deploy, blah, this is a kind of good, but it's very situational. During ambushes is pretty good. Retreating, you can kind of pick and choose when that applies sometimes. But overall, I wouldn't complain about this army too much. He has no special building that he gets. But that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is the short campaign victory. This is maintain 50% of the following corruption in the specified provinces. 50% corruption I wouldn't call too difficult. Lustria, Clawed Coast, Iron Mountains. Pretty good stuff, pretty good stuff. Hexacodal, faction that's relatively near. Lothern, that one's a bit more difficult because you can't take all of this is uninhabitable. You can take it, but it will take a long time to secure it, and you'll be playing whack-a-mole for a while fighting High Elves. And you don't ever want to be in a prolonged engagement with High Elves. It is possible to take them down. I've done it. It's just, while you're taking them down, the Empire starts to get wind of you, Bretonnia starts to get wind of you, Dwarves start to get wind of you, and they don't like Skaven. This is the part that I have a lot of problems with. This is what I call where the campaign turns into... It's not a Mortal Empires campaign in the terms of you have an objective, you do the objective, and you win. This is... A lot of people have the alternative objective of, oh, I want to get the short campaign objective and the long campaign objective, but they also just want to paint the map. This right here, to me, makes it so you have to paint the map as Skaven and basically break out an all-out war to everyone. Because here's Caron, it's coastal, maybe not that bad, right? Because as Rictus, you're going to be bulldozing. You can capture this entire area, actually, and secure it. Usually after you do that, you're going to immediately be dealing with Norshka, which isn't too much of an issue. They're just kind of annoying. Makes you divert your forces. And then you've got Marathi down here that likes to stay alive. This High Elf that's kind of stealthy. He usually does it pretty fast, and he likes his Shadow Walkers, and those tend to be a problem, but like I said, it can be dealt with. Hexacodal will start coming for you. That's where it starts to be an issue of, like, you have Carnosaurs from here, like Carnosaurs, big monsters from here, which you want to have primarily anti-large and a lot of fast damaging units. And meanwhile, you have Elves who usually field, in my experience, a lot of Swordmasters of Hoeth and Phoenix Guard, and like 1 or 2 dragons, which means you want a mostly anti-infantry army. So you have an anti-large army, anti-infantry army. And they tend to come at you from both sides. You could be fighting over here on on Ulthuan and have to defend against Hexacoatl over here. That becomes rather taxing. These guys get wiped out by you, and you take these port settlements. It's very profitable. Once again, if you can take... Sometimes I see people ally with Nagrand. I prefer not to, and just because it's a very high-value settlement. Hag Reef is a very high-value settlement. I prefer to kill all of this and just take it for myself. I've tried allying with them. They just don't reliable. I'll basically be winning the war with Ulthuan, and they'll get wiped out by the Empire up north, slowly just crumbling apart. And then this is more of a liability than an asset if I took it and sieged it down and won it early on. I've also had campaigns where I've had that happen, that whole sieging it, where Empire takes all this, and I was actually forced out of Hotek's column to where I migrated all my forces from Ulthuan all the way to Karagate Peaks. Because I figured if I could take Karagate Peaks, at least I could set up a holding point. And Ulthuan was already destroyed. I destroyed the Hiles. Then came the problem of the Empire had like 128 provinces, and this was about turn 200 or so. My main point is taking out these provinces or controlling them by vassals or military allies. This might as well not apply. Vassals and military allies, not going to happen. Your early vassals will be Dark Elves and maybe this Skaven clan that's up here. That Skaven clan, for some reason, tends to survive quite a while. The Dark Elves really don't like to kill them. And you have the Katep fucking Exiles of Nehek. They're inconsequential. They tend to be a little annoying, but you just wipe them out real quick or ignore them completely. They never get strong. Castle Dragonhof. Really hard to reach for Clan Rictus. Oak of Ages. Not too unreasonable, but Oak of Ages for anybody is a hard sell. Skaven Blight. You could get an ally in Clan Scryer. Problem is Clan Scryer doesn't often hold Skaven Blight or hold their own at that. Tor Anlek. See, that's far more reasonable. You're already going to be in direct conflict with Ulthuan. There's not much way to avoid fighting with Ulthuan. They hate you, and they're kind of in direct border contact with you in terms of they like this area. They don't ever move down. I notice they don't move like this region or this region or that. They'd like to move up towards the Dark Elves, which then you're just inconsequential to them, and they screw you up on the way. And if the Dark Elves aren't there, well, they have a new punching bag, and it's you. Star Tower, relatively far away, but at least there's a landmass connecting it. Kislev, now that is brutal. Having to go that far into deep Empire territory. Hell Pit, which is very close, right there. Might as well be in Chaos Lands. Kazakh, that's all the way in Dwarf territory, which the easiest path is about here. You can take Skaven Blight and go up through here. Either way, it's a really difficult campaign. And from what I've examined, it's the same for Pestilence. I haven't checked on Clan Moors just yet, but I assume that they have their short campaign victory. Like, this has you painting the entire map. The only way I could see you taking any of these settlements, like a lot of these settlements that are really far away, like Lothern you can take, obviously. But for those really far away settlements that are even in the old world, I can't see you taking those reliably and holding them unless you either paint the entire map, which is fairly difficult considering you're trying not to go to war with the world, and everybody hates you. And keep in mind, I play on normal difficulty. So it's, with normal difficulty, you have no cheats for yourself, the AI has no cheats and no bias toward the player. Like in hard and very hard, I think it's hard mainly that they just get a bias toward the player. Very hard. They utterly just like the AI will team up against the player and reject diplomatic options against the player because the AI is supposed to be getting more difficult for you, and that translates into being less reasonable politically, which is weird. But picture conditions, that's just really difficult. The only way I can see reliably capturing these is if in, say, 1 or 2 turns you had undercities in minor settlements near the area you need to take, like Castle Dragonhof. You could have Tempelhof and the von Karstein hold here, and maybe the Moot. You could have that area taken with an undercity, and then you could use the Vermintide and the Rat King, whatever the hell, line of the undercity to deploy the fully researched Storm Vermin, a couple Plague Monks, I think it's 2 Plague Claws, a Doom Wheel, and a Hell Pit. Not the ideal army, but I'm saying with this you wouldn't be trying to strategically play it. Or at least, yeah, you wouldn't be trying to like win a battle via keen tactics. You'd just be swarming over them like 3 armies, bap, bop, boom, done. You'd basically hit the auto-resolve by having 3 armies confront what hopefully would be an unoccupied major settlement. You'd be fighting the garrison and nothing more. And you'd have that all happen, and you'd be fighting like 7 battles in 1 turn would be the optimal thing. All to take these little areas. Meanwhile, if we go to, excuse my language, and I often do play Clan Rictus, so I try to do Moral Empire's Clan Rictus several times. It is a very difficult campaign just because of his starting position and his very few leader traits that benefit him, or benefit his faction as a whole. And as for Clan Pestilence and Clan Moors, each of them have a better benefit, like one that can field more Stormvermin and Clan Rats a lot better, and the other can field a lot more Plague Monks and Plague Claws easily. Eshin, however, but they all have the same short-term campaign victories. Eshin, however, I noticed, doesn't have many of these problems that the other factions have. While it costs a lot to field some of these units, the upkeep for said units doesn't increase with the 220% recruitment cost. Hence what that means. I mean, the recruitment cost doesn't increase. As you can see, full army of Storm Vermin. It doesn't matter. It's like he's got upkeep reduction. Right here it should be. But yeah, he's got an upkeep reduction of 23% for all armies. He's got some other buffs, but he's just ready to go. He's all good. Okay, he's got a couple. I think he's disciplined. Yeah, he's disciplined. But overall, I paid for this army with bullshit. You know, like I do just have a shit ton of money as Skaven, which isn't often just a thing. Now, I currently have the triple tier shadowy dealings with him, with the clan contracts. So all it would reduce it by is 20%, and I would get the armor for Lords and Embedded Heroes. I pretty much got this to where I wanted it to be, which I don't use many Molder units, and I didn't really care about the construction cost. So I was okay with this, and we were all fine. This is where I kept it, and I never did another contract because I didn't give a damn, because I didn't want to fuck up this. This was perfect for me in terms of the units I field and how I use my armies. This, on the other hand, like this was 2k per pop. So were, like these were 2k per pop, those were 2k per pop, and I recruited them. at that time. And it's just a very reliable, as much as they try to hinder you with it, you can earn enough money that it becomes trivial. These were 2k per pop, these were at least 1k, and it's just ridiculous of the amount of money you have to pay for them, which is fine. It's utterly fine. That's kind of the whole point. You're supposed to use clan Eshin units. I just utterly defied the campaign and didn't care. It's like, I can make that one-time payment to get really good units. But this is essentially my in-game armies. These are how I won the campaign. And I can prove that to you. This army is to satisfy a short-term objective. Because look at the short-term campaign victory for this guy. Perform 4 rituals of the following category. Night Lord Say So. Night Lord Say So is a action that is right here. Normally, it's gone now because I've maxed it out, because I have all my my schemes unlocked. It is 10, 20, 30, 40, and finally 10, 20, 30, yeah, so 10, 20, 30, and then finally 40. Each with having the corresponding level have to coincide with Deathmaster Snitch's level. Because he's the only one that can do the task, and he is the one that has to be incapacitated for a certain amount of time. This will cost you food. Food as Clan Eshin is almost immediately not a problem, because you usually have food problems of 3 food. What is it? I think it's each settlement requires 1 food, and then every lord requires 1 food. Well, you start out with basically +1 because of this. What I did was I took this, and then I sacked this repeatedly for XP, and then I went on to take everything else. I took this, these lizardmen over here, took this, and that kind of annoyed me for a while, so I took them out, and took Malice out, and just proceeded onward. It was painting the map very nicely with united borders, a little bit of stuff with Clan Moors, because Clan Moors wouldn't move. But overall, chapter objective, 3 of the following. You just have to complete any of these chapter objectives during a chapter of sorts, which is just a certain amount of raised settlements. Perform 2 rituals of the following category. 4 scheme cost shadowy dealing, which I had already done 1 at this point, and perform 15 rituals of the following category, shadowy dealings, of which I had done 13. The 4 scheme one, like this counts for both. If you do a 4 scheme one, it's also going to count as one of these. But look at this. Destroy the following factions. Once again, we have 4. That's fine. We have 4. The other one, we had 4. That's fine. We had to wipe out those factions. Well, actually, with Rictus, we had to wipe out 2 factions, Hexacodal and Lothern. With this one, we had to wipe out 4. But all these are near us. Hag Reef is right there. Kazakharak is right here. Technically, they're right here. Black Crag got wiped out, but Black Crag starts right here. Last Defenders was quite wiped out by Clan Moors. Last Defenders is down here. Yeah, right down here. Yeah, they start around there. All easy to take out, like, in terms of location. I'm not caring about, like, how hard the army is to fight. Like, playing a video game is accepting a challenge to some extent. But ensure that the following buildings have been built. It's saying, oh, well, you need a big laboratory. A laboratory is, I believe, the Scryer. Is the Scryer, like, main structure. A Plague Abbey. That's the 2nd tier. It's either the 2nd tier or the 3rd tier pestilence, like, plague monk structure. Warp turbine plant. That's the Scryer one. I don't know what the laboratory is specifically. I think the laboratory might be the Undercity unique building. Temple of the Horned Rat. That's a maxed out Taskmaster's platform, or what you might commonly know as the Bell. Warpstone reactor. That is the big reactor structure that they've recently changed the resource boosting power of it, because they made the the individual minor settlement buildings give you more cash. And by cash, I mean gold, of course. This one maintain a total of 15 units of the following type. I thought this meant that you had to have 15 units, and but I didn't think about it. 15 units of the following type. I thought you had to have one of each of these, which there aren't 15 here. I'm dumb. I didn't read it at first. I thought this also meant that you had to have, that it's like, okay, maybe you have to have one of each of these and then just have enough of them to reach 15. Wrong. It just means you have to have one of these or a combination of these that equals 15. Hence why you see this weird-ass army in the ass end of nowhere that has just a bunch of warp lightning cannons. It's because it was the cheapest thing I could afford to recruit, and then maintain with upkeep. Because all of these units that it's asking for are relatively expensive. Plague Monks, Censer Bearers, Hell Pit Abominations, and Doom Wheels being the most expensive. Doom Wheels being the second most expensive, being it's like, Doom Wheels are $350, Hell Pits are $450, Plague Monks, Censer Bearers are $260 something or other, $267, $63. Warp Lightning Cannons are $250. Regiments around are obviously more expensive. But this is the end of the campaign. And you might be asking, like, how is this the end of the campaign? The dwarves are still alive. Even if I didn't do what I'm about to do, I could still win this campaign. And this is a Mortal Empires campaign as Skaven, which is something from what I've looked up and from what I've seen of other people's playthroughs, especially on Legendary, I've seen people go to like turn 500. It's ridiculous. It's turn 500 and they don't even win the battle, like they don't even win the campaign themselves. They're usually allying with so many people that the AI, and they basically raise structures so that the AI gets strong. They feed the AI that they military ally with so that that the Dark Elves crush the entire map. Or that the Vampire Counts crush the entire map. Stuff like, or not Vampire Counts, excuse me. Vampire Coast crush the entire map. And by Vampire Coast, I usually mean Count Noctilist, Sartosa, any of the combination of those. Because you cannot, as the player, often just paint the map as Skaven. It is very difficult because you are a high damage, shitty infantry. Like, your infantry is alright, it's just you need to hold the line for your high damaging units to kill everything. You're not lizardmen that can hold the line for ages and just grind the enemy down with sheer attrition. The way the game even shapes it is that you're supposed to fight 2 armies to 1. You're supposed to outnumber the enemy in a typical, like, thematic sense. This was my army, and I typically fought this with 3 armies fighting. Like, I stuck with 1 army for the longest time, and then eventually I got to about here and realized I needed to, that 1 army wasn't going to cut it anymore because I was fighting multiple high unit stacks before I declared war on them. I was killing all the enemies in my path, and I eventually looked and I was like, okay, yeah, they have a mobilized military of about 3 armies. I cannot fight 3 armies. Maybe I could fight 2 armies, but I can't fight 3 armies on my own. And I thought about the mobilization of the war machine of, why should I be trying to fight these 2-on-1 battles? Yes, it will save on resources, but I have enough of economy that I can take a, say, 4,000 gold loss on upkeep and still keep moving the war machine forward and gaining 8,000 per turn. So that's where I'm coming to the conclusion of why the hell are Clan Rictus, Clan Moors, and Clan Pestilence so difficult to win with. It's because their objectives for the short term, and we're specifically talking about short campaign. The long-term campaign for Clan Eshin is about the same level of fucking ridiculousness. Excuse my language. But this is what we would normally see as the short campaign victory for Clan Rictus, or Clan Pestilence, or Clan Moors. I'm going to show you in a second what Clan Pestilence looks like for their victories and that stuff, but I recently achieved victory as Skaven. I was going to complete a Mortal Empires campaign as Clan Rictus before Eshin came out, I was about to turn to like 265, and I was doing well, but then I looked at how realistic my goal was of actually winning the campaign. Not in the amount of time that I had set for myself for the DLC coming out, because I had like 8 days left, but in the sense of just the sheer grinding that would have to happen. And just the sheer ridiculous weight of the campaign. Like, I would have to play day in, day out, every day, just doing something that was not a interesting campaign and would be a stomp of just repeatedly going. And keep in mind, I played Warriors of Chaos when it first came out with Warhammer 1. I'm okay with having a hard fight in the beginning, bashing people in the beginning, and having to fight tooth and nail. One of my favorite armies, especially in the campaign, is Beastmen. I love running Ruckshaw over people that are much stronger than me and having to scrounge my way up to an unstoppable army. I'm okay stomping people out at the end and kind of having that be the climax of the campaign, is you being unstoppable, and that you don't have to fight these battles anymore, and if you do, it's largely trivial, even against dwarves. That's okay. I think like by turn 200 or something, that should be your... If you are that strong and you can simply stomp multiple settlements in a turn, and you are simply painting the map, and that's your objective at the moment, or for Beastmen, it's reaching a raise cap. That is your reward for being that strong. You came, you saw, you faced down the enemy, now it's time to revel in the blood, gore, and pillaging. Same could be said of Skaven, but it never is, because Skaven is a very different army. They require very different army compositions to fight different factions a lot of the time. Luckily, along this way, I've been fighting only factions that want to stand in one place and fire at me, and I encounter cavalry armies. Well, I have halberds. Those are a staple of the Skaven infantry line. I mean, this is my main army, and it's largely something from Napoleon Total War or Empire Total War, where it's just gun line and moving around units to make sure the enemy doesn't catch you, and using heroes to fend off charges and killing the enemy before they reach you, and microing when they do. This is another thing similar to it, but this is more of an auxiliary army that follows up on... It's like, hey, that force is kind of weak, we could take it, but we don't really need our main army to do it. We don't need Deathmaster Snitch in there, we don't need that. Maybe they're recovering. So we use this to pick off... It's our artillery battery army. This is our meat. This is our... Well, we're going to be engaged in the enemy, and if it does get down and dirty, if we run out of ammunition, and it gets down and dirty, especially in sieges, if we exhaust all our ammunition, the enemy is weakened, but we can't necessarily push in there and finish them off with Rattling Gunners, now can we, in melee? We can't finish them off with Warplock Jezzails in melee, even though Warplock Jezzails tend to surprise me with how well they fight in melee sometimes. Or at least survive in melee. We can't do that. So, we pressed in with Stormvermin Halberds, and this entire army is just meant to be the beef. It is meant to march in and clean up the weakened rabble like carrion birds. And this is just giving them the Siege Attacker trait. Early on, this unit was really useful. It fell out of favor. But, back to my point, I'm about to win this campaign. And you know how we do that? We do it like this. There we go. Sneaking Scouting, Black Crag, Scalpos, Verm. Done, right? Well, here, let me do that in a more interesting... Actually, no, we can't really do it like that. Anyways, we have to... But then we stash rations, Because remember, we have to wipe out the dwarves. And we have to kill... We have to wipe out the dwarves, and we have to perform 1 4 or higher cost scheme.
Shadows hide.
But I've got this dwarf faction that's remaining. Deathmaster Snitch is the only one that can do it. Pledge into our anarchy. We don't care about the consequences because the game is over. Now we won't actually get to see the cutscene that results of where all of the... It will, since it's a dwarf settlement, it will show all of the dwarf settlements being overcome by orc rebels. Because the natural antithesis of dwarven held settlements is an orc rebellion. That's just how their faction works lore-wise a lot of the time. Same thing with Skaven. Skaven usually have Skaven rebels. Certain Dark Elves usually have Dark Elf rebels. Empire... any territory with vampiric corruption, practically any territory with vampiric corruption usually spawns a vampire rebellion. Same thing with Chaos, regardless of the faction that has the structure.
Blades hidden, blades ready.
Okay, and it was gonna show a cutscene, but it said, "Oh shit, you won," and goes to that instead. And then it wants me to swap out my lord. That's fine. We have a backup. And that's it. That's Immortal Empire's campaign, short campaign victory for Skaven, Clan Eshin specifically. I would have to say that was a very fun campaign. We worked our way through, and we didn't have to grind our teeth or anything. We won and fought battles, and we tactically did well, we ambushed, and we progressed until we were unstoppable. I even stole a couple settlements from Clan Moors by using the shadowy dealings. But that's it, and it's over, and that was fun. 167 turns. Now, I am on normal, and I did exploit this campaign as much as I could. I cheesed it as best as I could. Maybe not as well as, say, Legend of Total War, but I did my best to cheese it in a way that was fun for me. If we continue campaign, Karaz Karak is wiped out. All of his faction is replaced by orc rebels. As you can see, the once proud dwarf settlement is replaced by orc markings and an orc rebellion. And the game is over for us, unless we want to go for the long campaign victory or paint the map. That's it. And we had fun, that was it. Clan Moors is still fucking about. We've got Carrag 8 Peaks. We've had some stuff. I didn't actually have to take this at all. I wanted it, so I simply stole it from Clan Moors, who already had it at tier 5 with the overthrow layer. Which, it's a costless scheme because it's 3 schemes, and you can only use this once every 10 turns. And that once every 100, 50, etc. But it was a fun campaign. Now, do I have Clan Pestilence loaded up? No, I do not. If we go to Clan Pestilence, we'll encounter much of the same short campaign victory stats of where Eshin goes, no, that's a long campaign victory. Long campaign victory is paint the map, essentially. Which, that's fine. If that's what they want long campaign victory to be, if that's what their design choice is, that's fine. As long as there's a sense of victory beyond painting the map. And I have seen other people complain not specifically about Skaven being difficult in sort of a Mortal Empires campaign, but Skaven, their victory conditions being ridiculous, or specifically Mortal Empire win conditions being ridiculous. I've also heard co-op campaign win conditions being ridiculous, but that's neither here nor there. I don't know how exactly they would solve that, because it would literally have to account for a combination of so many factions, Norska and Empire, Lizardmen and Skaven. You can't really thematically fit those together in a way that would make sense. So having a raised settlement and capture the map sort of solution is a lot. I can see how that's very quaint. But look, maintain Skaven specified provinces, Skaven corruption across all owned provinces. Right. We have 3 regions to take care of. 3 factions. Kind of a weird bunch of factions. Order of Lore Masters, the Blessed Dread, and the Awakened. Or Vampire Coast, as it were. Kind of a weird faction to wipe out, but you still have... Okay, now you gotta control... Okay, so you've done all this. Look at, you've taken out the Lore Master, you've taken the Blessed Dread, you've taken out the Awakened. You've controlled in all these areas, and you have the Skaven corruption. Yeah, well, I hope you just are ready for about 250 turns of just fucking around with taking the entire map, because you're gonna piss off everyone in here as you go through this. Maybe not the Skaven factions. And then after that, you have to get them to ally you, confederate you, or you kill them anyway. Look at that. All over the map again. Why do we have to, as Skaven, go all over the map regardless of what campaign we play for the short campaign victory? It's ridiculous. And CA, I say this from or CA or whoever wants to claim development. I know there's like producers, and there's developers, and then there's people, the design team. Whoever's responsible for this specific decision, this comes from a place of love. I enjoy the game that you made. I especially love that you switched from historical, because something I found in historical games was that a lot of the armies were very samey. If you could go back to, say, like, I never played a Rome game, but when I did look back at those Rome games, like Rome 2, Rome 1, you had barbarian factions, and they functioned essentially the same as let's say, the Roman factions. In the sense of troops, like, yeah, they had different troops, but they still captured settlements, improved the settlement. Maybe it was a different religious building, but I'm saying you could be historically somewhat accurate while building up the hype or the mythos a little. Like, say, wasn't there a game called Rise, Son of Rome? It felt historically accurate, it actually wasn't, with its portrayal of the barbarians, as moose head-wearing, skeletal kind of humans that kind of portrayed themselves as monsters. Well, you could have some of that mythos. Like, your units could be a little silly. Not in the sense that it'd be like, oh man, they're bull monsters. You could have a unit that, like, you could have unique faction traits. Not like reduced upkeep or increased public order or a lot of rebellions. Like, back in your early days of Total War, especially, like, from what I've seen, Shogun 2, Shogun 1, where you just have upkeep reduction, recruitment cost reduction, starting recruitment rank, all that stuff is rather boring. Recruitment cost reduction, ultimately kind of pointless. Upkeep reduction, it incentivizes you to go a certain way. I like Clan Eshin's sort of deal, because Clan Eshin has you have increased upkeep for other factions units or other clans units, which really makes you feel like you are Clan Eshin. When I bought say, Scryer units and Storm Vermin units, which are under the definition of Moors, even though Moors technically isn't the host of Storm Vermin. The, like, all the Skaven clans have some Storm Vermin. But when I bought those units, and they were in increased cost, I was making the decision to pay a exorbitant amount to have those units in my army. I felt like I was being extorted. Now you may say that that's bad, like say, oh, the games industry, oh, we always feel like we're being extorted by a day one DLC and shit like that. It's like, no, it was good because it was a gameplay mechanic to be extorted, and it wasn't actually going after my like personal real life profits or anything like that. I was being extorted by a clan in the game for use of their units because they didn't like me so much. I had the choice that I could do more missions for them and get more bias towards them and more biased against me by another clan. But meanwhile, I would benefit from the business transaction that was helping that clan out, having a leg up on other clans, while I would reap the benefits and the consequences of my actions of helping another clan against another clan. That felt very thematically strong. Once again, we see this is where you have to dash all over the map, and it's dumb, and it doesn't make any sense. This is fine. Black Crag, Kazarak, yeah, that's fine. But then, you have to go to Bretonnia, you have to go to the Empire, you have to go to the Vampires, you have to go to the Wood Elves, you have to go all the way to Ulthuan and wipe out the High Elves, you have to wipe out the Tomb Kings, which Tomb Kings are close. You have to go to fucking Hexacodal, which is all the way across the world. You have to go to Nagron, which is all on the ass end of the world. You have to go everywhere as Skaven, for some reason. I don't care what thematics that fits. I can't see that ever being fun, and I've seen complaints about the Mortal Empires campaign in general. I don't know about long campaign victory. Maybe that's their complaints, but they haven't stated specifically long or short. They just say the Mortal Empires campaign. But yeah, if you wanted to go and do a historical, like you did, what was it, Thrones of Britannia, I saw a resurgence of you doing just kind of lazy mechanics. Again, like, all the factions didn't feel very unique. One had slaves, but it wasn't fun. Like, I don't think the Dark Elf slave mechanic is really very fun. You have to deal with slave decay, and it's not very... It's just you build a structure and that's it. There's not much, but the Dark Elf roster makes that fun because the Dark Elf roster is unique. Even though they share somewhat of a similar playstyle to the High Elves. I don't play either faction very much because I don't find spears and missiles very fun. And that seems to be their main go-to. But overall, pleased with the new DLC. I haven't tried out Malleus Darkblade yet. I'm a little skeptical too because I usually don't enjoy playing Dark Elves. But I hope you enjoyed this, like, hearing my thoughts. I hope I wasn't too belligerent. I hope I conveyed myself in a way that wasn't attacking. Because I'm not trying to attack you. I'm trying to convey a problem I believe exists. I could be wrong, but I've looked into this a bit, so I would have to be proven otherwise, and I'm willing to be proven otherwise. Completely so. I'm more obsessed with finding the right answer to things rather than being right. I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to be right. I want to know what's correct. If I'm right, cool. If I'm wrong, I learn something new. That's how I look at a lot of my life. Anyways, take care, people. Skaven on.